I'm just kind of working my way around the Jeepster now. I want to get these front fenders on because they just don't fit very well at all. And it's the way they came from the factory, but just because the mounting holes and all the mounting brackets came from the factory that way doesn't mean we have to live with it. There's no reason why we can't modify it to make it look better. So one of the things I noticed right away was this fender was in, so there was a lip here, and this was out at the top, so it sticks out. This was mounted in underneath, which is nice, but then there's this big gap on the end here, and you can see into the opening at the end here. So there's a whole bunch here that I want to modify and just clean it all up. Make it look like a nice professional finish. So I'll show you up close and personal here what the issues are. Of course, one of the most obvious areas that need to be fixed is they curved this fender in pretty good. That's a fairly simple fix. This area here, this isn't quite as simple. There's an indentation here with this radius that it just isn't an appealing look. And then there's this gap along here, and with the car lowered down to the ground, it's not as noticeable, but this kind of thing just really bothers me. So I want to slice this open. I'll bend this back against the fender here and then weld in a piece, bring this contour down smooth, and then I'll also weld on an extension to this fender so that it goes all the way back and touches the body, and then roll it under so that everything meets nice and flush and smooth and we don't have these hard edges. And what I did here, this was in quite a ways, so I slotted all the bolt holes so that I could bring this out. So this is smooth. Then you can see where when this was painted, this was probably about 1/4 of an inch off, is how far off it was. So this was off quite a ways, and then as it tapers and comes down here, you can see this is all a pretty nice tight fit. So this is acceptable, and then I'll close up these gaps and make this all smooth one piece. And then as we get up to the top here, this is sticking out quite a ways. It's probably 1/4 of an inch. So that needs to be pushed inwards. But this edge is aligned. So it bulges out right here. So I just need to tap that in. And then this hole is just not very appealing. So I need to extend this piece that mounts with the bolts all the way up so I can close that gap in. And then you can see I put this piece of metal on top. That is the way the hood fits. The hood fits smooth here, and it fits smooth here, but then as you get back to the fender, it's almost 1 inch off. So the hood actually would overlap this edge like a substantial amount. This, in my mind, this should all be straight up and down. So this whole area here, all of this panel needs to be brought outwards, and then it needs to be on top of this fender instead of behind it. So that's going to be a pretty big task to get that out where it belongs. It's where it belongs here at the bottom, but then it's got to be tapered and move outwards all the way to the top. And then I need to do something so that when the hood is closed, I don't have this odd shape. Once this is all the same color, it won't be as noticeable as it is with the red and the yellow, but you can see that metal piece, that's where the actual hood fits. So I've got to clean that up. I just do not like that look. This area is only seen when the hood is open, but still not very tidy looking. This seam, it's got some flex and some movement, so the weld is actually cracked right here, and this seam, it gets moisture in there and you get some rusty residue. That's always going to look bad, so I'm going to weld over this whole seam and just completely smoothen that out. A few other areas that I'm noticing, there's some stress cracks on areas in here on the inner fender well, so those have got to be done. This is ugly. So when the engine bay is open, this just looks, I don't know, so unfinished. So I want to either bring that all the way out or at least cap it, maybe angle it in, maybe round it off. And you can see there's a gazillion holes in here. All these holes have got to be filled. Don't know why they were drilled in there, but over the years, quite a few different things have been mounted and remounted and moved and drilled holes. Same thing with this side. Not quite as many holes on this side, but this side is interesting. I kept wondering, why does this have a weld all along here, and then it's got this seam sealer that covered up the weld? And after getting the fender off and looking at it, I can see reasons why. I'll show you that in a second. But I've got another stress crack here that I've got to fix. Same ugly end on this side. I don't see a stress crack on this side. Those are definitely things we need to look for. Again, another stress crack here, so that needs to be welded in. But on this side, pretty big gap along here, and I suspect that's from when it was bumped, that was pushed up. So I need to either push this fender up against it, but it looks like that's a pretty nice, smooth, consistent bend. So what's probably going to be best is for me to split this open and tap that all in to fit the fender, and then weld this back in. Speaking of welding, you can see there's holes in this fender. So I was scratching my head, well, what were those holes for? Why are they there? And underneath, on the back side here, there should be a flange. On the other side, there's a flange, and it's bolted through into this panel underneath. Well, because of that weld in the fender well, it appears that this fender has been replaced. And this fender was probably off of a Willys wagon or a Willys truck, and it mounted underneath the cab through these holes. So when they replaced the fender, for whatever reason, they needed to make the fender well extension along here. They cut it off from the Willys Jeepster and welded it onto whatever this fender was stolen from. So I have the same issue here. This end needs to be cleaned up. I need to cover up these holes, and then underneath I need to weld on an L bracket that will be able to allow me to mount this on correctly, because the way it's mounted now, it's just mounted on with some great big huge silver washers. And again, got a big gap in here that needs to be closed up. I'd like to close up this gap. And then the same thing with the hood. I'll get the hood on, and I need to make sure this is all lined up perfectly. I want everything to be a nice, smooth transition. So what I'll do, I'll start by just marking where I want that actual bend to come over onto the fender. And then this is the ridge, the high point. I'm going to cut along that high point and then bend that piece solid up against here, and then I can weld in a little piece. just need to now trim off this excess and have it contour the body. And now just make a little triangular shape and extend this all the way back, and that will all close in for a nice finish. Now we'll go do this on the other side. Well, I did my best to try to move this fender up into position, just wasn't having it. So I went ahead and split it open, tapped it down. It's just a matter of getting behind that and just massaging it into place. So that looks good. Now it's sunk in a little bit, so I got to pull it out, bend this flange up, line it up, and weld that back together. So that's pretty simple. This one's fighting me. There's too much of a radius in here. It's totally different than the other side. And I think this fender is just contoured slightly different than the original Jeepster fender. But nobody's going to walk back and forth to compare. Nobody's ever going to even know that this is just slightly shorter and a little bit different contour. So it's just a matter of cleaning that up. Now it was really obvious when this was in place where it's supposed to be. That was a big gap compared to the other side. But that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to fix it. So I'll take that fender off. I've got it marked here where I want it to bend. I'm going to have to get some vice grips and play with this a little bit to get it to move over where I want it. And then I can make a piece to cover up that new hole. Come along. Gotta use my bolts with the big washers. So now that I have the body fitted, this needs to be modified a little bit too. It has kind of a flap that needs to be welded on here that cuts across that way and that way and that way. So I will make up a piece, and I need to bend a little angle iron kind of idea right along here and just tack that in. And then, as you can see on this side, there's these big holes. These three are for the Jeepster. These two are for one of the other models. So I need to cover those up because you can actually see them. So I'll just grind that smooth and weld in a couple plugs while I'm welding in this. And then there's a whole bunch of holes they drilled along here. They put on a stainless steel step. And I think that was probably to cover up these two holes. Who knows? But I'll weld over all those too. true test. Let's put this fender back on. And what I'm running into now is this fender is twisted up right here, and with those two big washers, it's just not holding it back. The original fender had a piece of angle iron like this, so I'll do the same thing. I'll weld this angle iron on, and I'll tack weld it to the top so that when I tighten those two bolts down, it'll pull that in the way it's supposed to. It all looks really good. It's all snug and tight. I need to make a few adjustments here and there, but the hard part's done. I just need to do it again on the other side. Took a little longer than I thought it would to get that bend out, where somebody curved this in real hard, but worked out good. We'll take a little skim coat of filler to clean it up. This angle iron right here is the one that is missing on the other fender. So what I did is I used it as a pattern. Cut me a piece of strap, bored some holes in it so it's adjustable like the factory original, and then it'll just weld along that seam in the back, just like this one is. Alright, get my welder out. I got a bunch of welding to do. Lots of holes. Man, I don't know why they had to drill so many holes in this, but instead of reusing the same holes, just kept drilling more. Notice a couple more here that I missed. I want to fill all these as well. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do with this yet though, so I'm probably going to use a piece of tubing, square tubing, to go the full length of this fender to stiffen them up and to clean it up too. And also, this little corner right here, I want to close that in. Put a piece that welds all across here, because you can see into that gap from the outside. Don't like that. If you don't like it, fix it. And then working my way around these fenders, just inspecting all the edges. I've got stress crack here and a stress crack here. So I want to just open those up so that I can weld over them. So as I work my way around, I want to clean up all of these holes that I'm going to weld over so I can clean off both sides. Get a good clean weld. Alright, well, you can see I got all my welding done now on these fenders. I've got a whole lot of holes plugged up. I've got these corners and that corner down there. And I've also got, there's a big hole here. There was a flagpole that stuck out of this. So I've got that one plugged. I did the seam and the two splits on that. And all the holes that are on the inner fender wells. This piece here, I went ahead and put it on, but now I need to pull it back off. I've got everything fitted up real nice, but I need to weld that bracket underneath. And then these front fenders are pretty much all finished up with the major work. Get them all sanded down there. I'm going to need to bring these all the way down to bare metal. And what little bit of sanding I've been doing on this fender. This used to be white, so it's definitely from a different vehicle. But that one's the original one on that side. It's got yellow and red. And you can see it all along there. That has all been straightened out now too, where that had been bent in quite a bit. I feel real good about that. So you can see it's got undercoating all underneath. So I've got to clean all that undercoating off now so that I can redo all the inside of these fender wells and make them all nice. Oh yeah, I haven't done this seam yet either. But everything else is done on these. It's great. It's going a lot faster than I thought it would. I thought it was going to take a lot longer to fix these dents and fill all these holes. I've spent maybe 3 hours today filling all the holes and welding on some brackets and filling in some seams, so it's pretty good. Made a lot of progress. Well, if you like what I'm doing, please give me a like, share. If you think anybody else would be interested, it really helps me build my channel. If you haven't subscribed, please do that as well. Alright, well thanks again, and we will see you in the next episode of this Jeepster build and maybe some of my RV adventures. Thanks for watching. Goodbye for now.